Guys, it's 1 o'clock. Welcome. We normally allow a couple of minutes, but I think I might just as well start with the intro. Thanks for logging in. My name is Goro Balak. I am president for the Association for Renewable Energy Practitioners. Yeah, what else? What else do you need as an intro? I started a process a couple of years ago where I wanted to change the electrical installation regulations. I'm going to switch my camera on for a minute or so, just so that you guys can see what I look like, especially for those of you who don't know me. Good afternoon. I'm stuck in Komiki on a stormy, not a stormy, it's like a massive storm in the Western Cape. So if the sound is bad, then it must be because of the storm or maybe from where I'm presenting. I'm going to rather switch off my camera to preserve bandwidth. And for those of you that have joined this session, the intention with this session is to start looking at the electrical installation regulations and to start discussing potential changes that we can submit or proposed changes that we can submit to the Department of Labor to change the electrical installation regulations to a regulation that is more applicable and suited to the electrical sector. The last time the electrical installation regulations was updated was in 2009, and then there was a clarification that was published in 2012, and that was it, guys. That's 12 years ago or 13 years ago that the clarification was published, and 16 years ago that the regulation was published. Since then, industry has changed enormously. There have been numerous technological developments. If I look at solar, for example, that has been added to the mix. And none of those aspects that we face as electricians on a daily basis is covered in the electrical installation regulations. I do not think that the chief inspector or the Department of Labor, for that matter, has any idea what is going on in the electrical sector and how the electrical sector works. So we are essentially working on a couple of proposed changes that we have no idea whether they're going to be adopted. Is this something that we are supposed to be doing? If there are some of you that are wondering whether this is something we should be doing and why isn't the Department of Labor running with it? If the Department of Labor doesn't know what's going on in industry, how are they supposed to even start this process? If I look at the chief inspector, she's more involved in the medical industry because that's her background. And I think it would be proactive of us as an industry to create a document or to propose changes that we can submit to them, and they can then respond. They can then respond accordingly. For those of you that have just logged in, the session is being recorded, guys. This video is going to be posted on a YouTube channel. So on the AREP YouTube channel. So if there are some of you that are not comfortable with the fact that you are going to be recorded, then unfortunately you would have to leave, or you could refrain from saying anything and send an email. In the event where you send an email, it's probably going to be read at the next meeting. So you should be aware that your comments are going to have to be done in a way that you consider them to be transparent and open to being published. This is not, I would like to think that this is not the forum or the type of forum where you can make anonymous comments. You either represent yourself when you make the comments, and it's going to be published in that way. So if it's something that you're not comfortable with, then well, unfortunately, you won't be able to participate in the process. So as long as everybody's comfortable with that, guys, at the moment, I see we've got 114 guys in the meeting, which is a great attendance for what I would like to consider an extremely, not mundane, but it's, yeah, to work on regulations and standards. It's could be frustrating. Okay, so we've got 100 guys in the meeting, which is great. So how do we start off this process? Do we make the group of guys, in other words, do we leave it open where we have 100 guys in the meeting at every meeting, and we propose changes and we vote on them? Or do we go and do a bit of homework and submit proposed changes? Guys, I need some feedback from you. To be honest, I've never changed the regulation before. I have a vague idea of what the process involves, and the idea that I have, or the background I have, is what the chief inspector and the chief inspector's 2IC, Mr. Jacob Malatsi, has told me. So the info I have on the process is what I've read in the regulations. What we are doing now, as in the time that I've been involved in industry, has never been done. So there is no solid process. There is no a guidebook on how this should be done. We are going to do it. We are going to submit it, and we are going to make industry a better place for all electricians. Bo wants to know, can I confirm that you want to change the regulations and not the law? Bo, yes, the electrical installation regulations, and I'll give you an example. The chief inspector issued a notification a couple of months ago, I think it was in March, saying that single phase testers, or confirming in writing that single phase testers are allowed to issue COCs for solar powered single phase installations. Arguably, that is the most contentious issue in the electrical installation regulations, because the way that the regulations have been written is extremely vague. So it's open to interpretation, and it's vague. So what we can do is we can add a few words and tweak the paragraphs to change it to the context where we as an industry understand what it means and we are happy with the content. I want to kind of take the ambiguity out of the regulation and make it slightly more specific. I hope that answers your question. Another thing that I would like to address is, if we look at the registered person, at the moment, the regulation requires a company that registers as a contractor with the Department of Labor to have a registered person in its full-time employ. This creates an issue because all of the builders I know use electricians to do their changes to their building projects, or to make changes to their building projects. But the electricians might not be registered with the Department of Labor, so the building contractor has an electrician that works for him on a full-time basis, that does his electrical work, and then afterwards he just gets an electrician to sign off his work. At the moment, that is considered to be against the regulation. But that is how all contractors work. So it's not uncommon for a building contractor to have an electrician doing his work for him, and that electrician not being not, he might be qualified, but he's not registered with the Department of Labor. So there are a couple of things that I think we need to address, and that would be another one of them. Carl Jacobs then says, do you have any specific regulations that you have a problem with? Yeah, the electrical installation regulations. So the electrical installation regulations is not applicable to how we do electrical installations anymore. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, yes. But at the moment, things have changed, the market has changed, the environment has changed. Carl then says, numbers, please. Carl, are you referring to the number in the electrical installation regulations? Dion says, just for clarity, why would we not want them to be registered? So Dion, I think the electrical contractor has to be registered. So the electrical contractor, no, wait. So contractor and a registered person. So let me just clarify the two. A registered person is an individual. I think it would be more realistic to have one registered person linked to multiple contractors, instead of having one registered person linked to one contractor. So it's not that they shouldn't be registered. I still think they should be registered, but the regulation does not make provision for someone to register as an electrical contractor who doesn't have an electrician in his full-time employment. So we've got a lot of guys that are doing electrical work. So you've got a building contractor. So the building contractor arrives at a site, and the bulk of his work at that particular site is electrical by nature. Let's just take an example. So he arrives at a site, the bulk of the work is electrical, but he's a building contractor. His next contract is going to have almost no electrical work, and the rest is going to be building wet works. In other words, bricks and mortar. So it's not viable for him to appoint an electrician on a full-time basis. Those are the, but I still feel he needs to be able to register as a contractor with the Department of Labor to keep his business above board, even if he doesn't have an electrician working for him on a full-time basis. Bo says, I do not understand that what you want to change, but it is important to take note of the following. The regulation can only be changed to the extent that empowering provisions in the law allow. Yeah, that's fine. We are not going to contravene what the law says. some changes in the regulation might require changes in the law to give the minister the powers to make these regulations. I think we have to be realistic about what we are looking at. I think Mark is in this meeting. Mark, are you here? Mark Palmer. I'm sure I saw your name somewhere.
Hello, Carl, can you hear me?
Mark, there you
Yes.
are.
All right,
Hello.
can you hear me? Oh,
Yes,
great.
yes, I can hear you loud and clear. So
Okay,
Mark,
no, great.
I think my question quickly relates to the thing that that Bo asks about the law. So we have an act, then we have a regulation, and then we have a standard in that order. So you've got the act sitting at the top, then you've got a regulation sitting underneath it, and then you've got a standard underneath that.
Correct.
Now, what we want to have a look at amending or proposing changes to is the electrical installation regulations. That might have an impact, and I like what Bo has said, because that might possibly have an impact on the Health and Safety Act. So we've got the Health and Safety Act sitting above the electrical installation regulations.
Yeah, I think, Carl, yeah, just in terms, I know we touched briefly on this thing a short while ago. My feelings in the matter on this, I think the act is not going to be affected too much here, because the regulations specifically are dealing with the work that is actually being done. And we need to understand that the installation of a solar PV system or power supply system is going to be regarded as electrical installation work. The minute we start connecting up all of these various components and we interface that system to an electrical installation, all of that's going to be regarded as electrical installation work. Therefore, the electrical installation regulations specific are going to cover that, and compliance is going to then obviously be linked to all the other standards. So we've got 10142 part 1, we have the 60364 and all the other stuff that is sitting out there. The reality of what we're dealing with here, and I think maybe just to try and clarify to the guys that are out there, is one needs to remember that the 2009 regulations emanated all the way back from 1992. And in 1992, already bringing through a lot of those regulations, even into the 2009 environment, the Department of Labor themselves effectively, probably incorrectly at the time, but they assumed that everybody that did electrical installation work is an electrical contractor, and therefore needed to register as a contractor. And if you weren't registered as a contractor, therefore you were operating as a pirate or illegal contractor. So that's what they envisaged, or what the original intention was. And you are quite right that over the years, in fact, that was not the case, because we do have, excuse me, many other environments like the building and construction environment whereby that is not the case. The solar PV environment, sorry, you'll excuse me, I have a little bit of a cough, has developed exactly the same way. The reality, and that's what I just want to throw at you, and that's the issue that I discussed with you, is I have already been involved with a solar PV installer, let's call them that, a fairly large company that was involved in a installation down in KZN, where the Department of Labor effectively came onto the site, and the Department of Labor asked them for their electrical contractor registration certificate, which they did not have, because they were not actually electrical contractors. They didn't meet the criteria because they never had a registered person full-time. So what they were doing is utilizing an external guy.
Yes.
registered person to do it. But in the interim, what the Department of Labour inspector did is issued them with a prohibition notice, prohibiting them from doing any further electrical installation work until duly registered. Now, they
Yes.
already envisaged that as being what they effectively were stopped from doing business. And that's the problem we face. We don't have enough of those guys out there. So I think, in essence, where we need to be looking at this thing and seeing what steps need to be taken is there is a legal mechanism to deal with that. But we've got to deal with it properly. And solar PV guys have got to deal with it correctly using properly constituted subcontractor agreements with other guys, how those registered persons actually do it is going to be important, but that needs to be put into place. And that's where I mentioned to you, we need to pass meet so we could start putting together whatever that process is going to be within the current regulatory environment. Because if the solar PV installers guys don't start doing that correctly, those again, having said, they are not registered contractors. I can guarantee you this little exercise is going to now make its way through the entire Department of Labour. So we have to deal with that thing effectively. But at the same token, we need to deal with the regulations. And that's not going to be an easy process. But unless we start somewhere and start putting pressure on the department, we're not going to get anywhere. It's not an easy process, but we have to start doing it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. And I think what you are referring to is exactly just that. If you look at solar installers, and guys, just before you get hot under the collar, in 2016, might have been 2018, I went to go and see Louis Pretorius at the Electrical Contractors Association. He was involved in the Germiston branch. I went to see Louis and I said, Louis, this is who I am. This is what I'm looking at. We've got a lot of solar installers that are looking to register as, you know, somewhere in industry to kind of be part of something. And Louis Pretorius at that stage said to me, Carl, electrical contractors don't work with DC. He said, as the Electrical Contractors Association, we do not have a mandate to cover solar installations. We don't have a membership category, and at the moment we don't look at solar because we don't recognize it. Electricians do not work with DC. Fast forward 10 years later or 8 years later, the electrical sector is up in arms because there are solar installers who are not registered. And that's exactly what happened. So now you've got a solar project, but you only, maybe you don't have 100 solar projects, you just have one every 2 months. So you can't afford to have an electrician on a full-time basis. And I like what Marcus just said, that there are mechanisms. So you can get a letter of appointment from a registered electrical contractor who agrees that you will be working under his guidance and supervision. What do you guys call a general control? That's the word that's used in the regulations. You do get a letter of appointment that says that your company will be working under the general control of this or other a registered person. So that can be done. But what that does is it means that that contractor cannot register as an electrical contractor. So solar is part of the electrical sector, but it kind of limits the way the regulation has been written at the moment, limits an electrical contractor, limits a solar installer and other contractors doing electrical work, limits them they literally they can't register with the Department of Labor as an electrical contractor because they don't have a registered person in their full-time employ. So Carl Jacob says, so you want to change that so that you can use a part-time electrician? Yes. You want to be able to change the regulations so that any contractor, that even contractors that use part-time electricians can register as an electrical contractor with the Department of Labor. So we have lots of issues with guys who can't register with the Department of Labor because now all of a sudden you have to be registered with the Department of Labor to be able to be registered with the bargaining council. So there are lots of small stumbling blocks that we just need to sort out and iron out. Theo says, also, how can single phase testers certify battery banks? Theo, just a second. I was on a site over the weekend where an installation electrician issued a COC on the site. He cross-mated a couple of brands on the solar panels. He voided the solar panel warranty by screwing the solar panels onto the roof. He didn't have enough gap between the panel and the roof. He voided the warranty of the roof sheets because he used the wrong screws on the mounting structures. We look at single phase testers and we go, these guys have not been trained for DC. Not even an electrician has been trained for DC. Not even an installation electrician has been trained for DC. The guy who did the work there couldn't get a 30 kilowatt Fox hybrid inverter to run a 5 kilowatt load because he never checked the power factor. So this is not even battery banks. He never checked the power factor. The power factor on that site was between 0.2 and 0.3. On a 5 kilowatt load, he was drawing 50 kVA. So certifying battery banks, if you have a tester and you've attended the training, there are some meetings we've recorded with the Department of Labor where Peter Loubser, who has now retired, was asked the same question. And Peter said, a person who issues a certificate of compliance accepts the responsibility that goes with that certificate. And if he doesn't know what he's signing off, he needs to be aware of it and he needs to go for training. But that is not the Department of Labor's responsibility. That is the registered person's responsibility. So I am more than happy to look at guys and go, it doesn't matter who you are. If you have not been trained, you are not going to understand how to do solar. Whether you're an IE, whether you're an engineer, in 2018, the solar installers had to give electrical engineers advice on how to design solar systems. I don't know if there are some of you on this forum or in this meeting that remember those days. You would advise the engineers on how to design the system. They would come to you, say, what size cable do we use? How do you calculate it? What do we look at? How many panels do we use? But now engineers have caught up on the curve. We need to get over the single phase DC hurdle that the guys on the social media platforms have created. We need to get past that. Silence says section 6.4. Sorry, Mark, did you want to say something or did someone have their microphones on?
Then all of a sudden ayikhala kodwa zange yakhala.
Was it Anele? Anele, your microphone was on, but I see it's off at the moment. Okay. So Silent says, employs a registered person in a full-time capacity. Yes, Silent, that section. 6.4.b, that has to be changed. Rian says, is there a step-by-step guide available that explains the steps to be taken to register as a single-phase tester? I see Wynand has added a document there. So, Rian, I'm assuming that you are sorted on that question. Jonathan says, electrical work is a specialized service. The builder should stick to brick and mortar work. He should use the service of an electrical contractor that is registered. Yes, I agree. Without a full-time electrician in the company, they will soon start allowing any of the bricklayers to start doing wiring. Guys, this is an excellent topic. I absolutely like that comment, Jonathan. Have you guys looked at what the bargaining council says? If you do yourself a favor, I don't know who has the bargaining council standards or steps or whatever. So the bargaining council allows a guy that has been doing work for 3 months. Okay, so I want you to picture this, and maybe just, I don't know whether this is going to make a difference. I'm going to switch my camera on for a bit. If my signal packs up, I'll switch it off again. Picture this.
You're gonna.
You've got a Anele, your microphone's on again, dude. You've got a building, you've got an electrical contractor. So you've got an electrical contractor, a guy with a bucky. He's part of the bucky brigade, not because he does bad work. He owns a bucky, and he's got a toolbox. So he's an electrical contractor. He's registered. Gets a big project. Drives past Builder's Warehouse, for lack of a better word. Drives past his closest hardware store. He's got a lot of work to do. He's got 3 trusty electricians in the back of his bucky, all experienced. They've been working with him for years. So he's run out of manpower. Stops at a hardware store, picks up 2 extra guys. Just a random number. Picks up 2 extra guys. These guys work for him for a period of 3 months on a site. Might be a new site where they're busy putting in, I don't know, conduit, drawing cables, whatever. These guys are working for him. Under the bargaining council guidelines, that guy that's been working for that contractor for a period of 3 months is allowed to start doing DC wiring. So now you've got this contractor. He's appointed this assistant, and now the project is gone, and that assistant sits without work. Now that assistant has gained experience in electrical wiring, and guys, this is how life works. So now these guys have gained 3 months worth of experience with an electrician. A builder stops at the same hardware. Now these guys are back next to the road. The builder goes, I'm looking for someone that has some experience with electrical. These 2 guys that have been working for 3 months, they put their hand up. They start working with the building contractor. So, and that is just how life works. We need to get beyond the point, past the point where we are scared that someone else is going to take our work, and we need to start accepting ownership for the quality of work in industry. If you as an electrical contractor get an opportunity to go and issue a COC, even for a project that you did not install, and now I know I'm going to get lots of guys going, ain't no ways, I'm checking out of this meeting. If you don't issue a COC for work in your area that you didn't do, then you don't have an opportunity to complain about the poor quality of standard of installations. Because if you say, I was not at this project, I will not sign this work off, then what you are saying is you don't trust your equipment, and it's fine if someone else signs it off. Then someone else is going to sign it off. He's going to sit in a different town, going to issue a COC without even having inspected the work. And in a year's time, you're going to go back to that site. You're going to complain about how terrible this work has been done. And someone has to take ownership of the quality of work in the electrical sector. So what Jonathan has said is extremely valid. The regulations make provision for a guy to work under the general control of a registered person. So guys, own it. If someone wants to work under your general control, accept that responsibility. Start giving the advice and start showing the guys how to do the stuff properly in your area. And then you will start setting the standard of workmanship in your area. So Jonathan says, as an electrical contractor, we have to be registered with the bargaining council. Yes. But we can't do that if the guys who are doing electrical work can get away without registering with the Department of Labor. So if we change this in the electrical installation regulations so that anybody that is interested in doing electrical work can register as an electrical contractor with the Department of Labor, it's going to be much easier to control the standard, because at least you'll be able to see who is registered with the department. Is this guy registered? Cool. I'm registered as an electrical contractor. Today I want to use Gideon to do my installation. Tomorrow I'm going to use Brahm. The day after that I'm going to use Derek, because Derek is in a different region. Today my installation is in Gauteng. Tomorrow my installation is in the Free State. So tomorrow I'm going to use Frikkie from the Free State. And today I'm going to use Sipu from Gauteng, because they are local to where I'm doing the work, and I should have the flexibility to be able to use different guys to oversee my guys doing the electrical work. Then Theo says, according to SAN, single-phase test is not allowed to issue a COC on DC installations. I had Theo, I don't think you've seen the circular that was circulated by the chief inspector on single-phase testers. Single-phase tester is allowed to issue a COC on a solar-powered single-phase installation. Wynand has corrected that. Luandile say, can someone please kindly share edition 3.2 of SANS? Yeah, Luandile, unfortunately you need to buy that. I see Vessel has corrected you there. And then Silent says it's been copyrighted. Yeah, unfortunately it's something you have to buy. Jonathan that says, be it AC or DC, outside of the voltages and type of voltages, electricians have been trained and tested on how to make an installation safe for consumption. That is excellent. Again, Jonathan, and yes, you've got the tools and equipment and the knowledge and experience to be able to guide someone else, supervise them, oversee their work, so that they can work under your general control. What happens to Have you guys seen what's happening in the electrical sector? So for a solar system, you have to get an engineer to sign off the design of the system, and the electrician or the registered person then signs off the COC. What's happened on the sites where we've been involved is, if you get to know the engineer inspects your first site. he makes some recommendations. You make some changes. The engineer inspects your second site. Again, same thing happens. By the time you've done the third or the fourth or the fifth site, that engineer knows your work. He doesn't come out to inspect the site anymore. You take a photo, you send it to him, and the engineer signs the design off. Because he accepts that the work that you've done is correct. Why can electricians not apply the same logic? Guys, it's the only way this can work is if we start working together as an industry. Gideon says no training. Yeah, so if you are going to be doing an installation and you are going to be issuing a COC for that installation, the Department of Labor says it's your responsibility. You need to own it. So if you know you need training, you need to get trained on something, whether it's solar, whether it's earthing, whether it's lightning protection, doesn't matter what it is, what part of the electrical installation it is. You need to get trained on it and you need to be comfortable with the responsibility you've accepted to sign off that COC. Melt then says, as part of this regulation revision process, could we also look at trades like aerospace electrician and other relevant trades be able to register as electrical installers, perhaps with the RPL system? These trades are mostly better qualified in DC side and less on the AC side. Melt, I like the suggestion very much, but I don't think that fits into the regulation. If you have a look at the requirements that Wynand has shared earlier on, the requirements list what trades can fit in there. So what we can do as part of this process is we can recommend certain amendments to that document. And I think so. What struck me as being interesting is they list a lift electrician or a lift mechanic as a guy that can register. What was that, as an installation electrician? I found that very interesting.
From the beginning
Dele, I see your microphone's on. Thank you. Sebastian says the requirements to register as a registered person allows electrician and other electrical persons can be achieved with the necessary training. I don't see why you want to bypass this and use unregistered electricians. No, man. Sebastian, I don't want to use unregistered electricians. I just want contractors to be able to register as an electrical contractor, whether they've got a registered person in their full-time employ or not. It'll give it a bit more flexibility. And what it will also do is it will give the Department of Labor the I don't want to say mandate, but if you look at where the electrical sector is at the moment, the only guys that can be taken to task are electrical contractors. So the only guys that can be taken to task in the electrical installation regulations are guys that are registered as electrical contractors. So we've got all these building contractors and other trades doing electrical work. We've got plumbers changing geysers, putting circuit breakers in the DB board. And I know there's this thing about plumbers, but especially plumbers doing electrical work in the social media circles. But the fact of the matter is there are other guys that are working on electrical circuits. Have you guys seen DB boards where guys that do air conditioners, every time they do an air conditioner or they fit a new air conditioner in a house, they put in a new circuit breaker? My goodness, have you guys seen what those DB boards look like? I know you have, but we've got all these trades. So a guy doing refrigeration should be able to register as an electrical contractor so that it gives them the ability to legally do electrical work using registered persons. So I'm not trying to mess. I'm not trying to bypass or mess with it. In between, life happens. You've got guys who have a little bit of experience who want to continue gaining experience in electrical installation work, and they want to do it, and they're happy to be mentored by an electrical contractor. And we need to start owning that process so that we can control the standard of installations in our sector. Okay, Silence says, from a municipal perspective, a notice commencement work should take care of general control. Yeah, I like that. Silent, that is very nice. So, um, you can get a notice from an electrical contractor saying that they have been appointed as the electrical contractor for your project. And that is very similar to that notice, and commencement of works that will oversee the general control. So that's a very nice comment. General control is the issue. 10 sites, one registered person. How does that help? Yeah, thanks, Jacques. That kind of answers, that speaks to the same kind of issue we have. We've got one electrical contractor that's registered. He's got one registered person working with him, and he's got 10 sites. So theoretically, there's very little general control taking place. You'll probably find that the guy who's a registered person just follows the teams, and he just goes and signs the COCs after the fact. So you've got these guys who are just doing installations, and you've got this one registered person just following the teams and just signing off. So they're not working under his general control. He's just kind of catching up wherever they've done work. Graham White says City of Cape Town still doesn't accept single phase COCs for PV systems. Yeah, thanks, Graham. We are working on that. So it's interesting. It's interesting that they made the decision not to allow single phase testers. Single phase testers has been allowed to sign off COCs always. It has just been the ECA who created the perception that they're not allowed to sign off. And then the City of Cape Town adopted the rule based on the rumors that the ECA circulated. And then when we contested it, they said, oh no, this letter doesn't look legit. That's funny. They could have, I mean, an authority like that, you'd expect them to at least be on top of what the regulations say, and you'd expect them to be in contact with the different government departments. Ryan says, I don't know if it's Rian or Ryan. Rian's surname is Fenter, so I'm assuming that's Rian. I lost connection and lost the chat. Rian, this is also going to be posted on the AREP site. So that's great. Gideon says tricks of the trade is missing. Yes, absolutely. Ian says, then how do you sign off a house that is sold with the solar if you didn't do the job? Ian, yeah, I shouldn't say what I just thought. It's kind of, every house that is sold has a COC that is issued again on that property. And I would kind of guess that 95% of COCs that are issued on homes that are sold have not been done under the general control of the electrician that's issuing that COC. So go and have a look at the regulation. I think the regulation talks about new projects and existing projects. There's no ways that you can issue a COC for a project that's been done under your general control when you are doing COCs for homes that have been sold. So the answer is, how do you sign off a house that is sold without a solar installation? You have been trained to trust your testing equipment. You have been trained to do the tests, to understand whether the installation complies and whether the installation is safe. When the installation is safe and the installation complies and you have tested it and you are comfortable with the fact that this installation is safe, you issue a COC. And that's how you do it. Wynand replies with inspect, test, verify, certify. Dankie Wynand, that's sorted. Silent says the house should have two COCs, the original one before the solar and the new one for the solar. And then he says, how is now requiring a COC because it's being sold? Silent, you are missing out on work. Just do yourself a favor and issue the COC and move along. Unfortunately, it is a requirement to have COC. So you have to have a COC for the electrical, for the glass, in some municipalities, for the plumbing and for the gas. So glass, electrical, plumbing, gas, in some provinces, beetle inspections. So there are quite a few inspections and a whole lot of processes. The toy says the whole process makes us qualified second-hand qualifications. No, it amplifies the qualification. It amplifies the qualification because now you can, guys, as an industry, we are missing so many opportunities. You are qualified to be able to test, inspect, and verify. That's what you guys do. You've got the equipment. You are paying your levies with the bargaining council. You are paying the Department of Labor. You've got all these services that you are paying for. We need to own our industry and start looking at what is happening around us. An electrician has a lot of responsibility, and being able to take your equipment, test the system. It feels good to test the system. You test the system, you know it's safe, you know it works. Sometimes you find something that is not working, you swap it out, all of a sudden it's working. I think it feels great. It's empowering to leave a site in a working condition and knowing that you've made a change. Carl Jacob says, I suggest that you put the issue on paper so that we can comment. This is not going anywhere. Suggest that you put some sort of white paper together. Thank you very much, Carl. I am going to do that. What this meeting has done is this meeting has given me a lot of insight on questions that were asked and topics that were raised. And what I'll do is I'll do exactly that. I'll take the comment, I'll draft something, and then we can circulate it for comment, and then maybe have another meeting. I would think we are going to have another few meetings before we submit it to the chief inspector. I'm very excited about submitting something to the chief inspector. Linda, yes, that was noted by Graham previously. We are working on that. Sebastian says, please don't speak for all engineers. Yeah, Sebastian, I was generalizing. Sorry. That is not and is not limited to one guy. Or it's not linked to everybody. So no, fair enough. Obviously, you were one of the guys who's known your stuff for many years. So then Yuan says it is a problem when you have 2 to 4 projects running with one IE. It is. Point electricians to work and IE is just oversee work and issue a COC. Oh, absolutely. That's how it works. So Carl, it's not entirely fruitless. I'm enjoying the input. There's a lot of input from the guys that are in the meeting, and I value the input. I'm definitely going to make use of it. So it's definitely not a waste of time. This, in fact, was way more input than I expected. So this has been very good so far. Most municipalities make the XR registered professional the policeman. They are being made to check compliance to SANS and 097. This includes things like earth neutral bonding compliance. Yeah, that's fine. That is so. That I think is going to change as soon as the solar PV service technician qualification is coming through. Harry says, yeah, the COC issue for the single phase tester has been covered on a couple of topics, so I'm moving on. De Toy Meiberg says this will never happen in the medical profession. Yeah, De Toy, actually it does. We hear of doctors that fake qualifications. I don't think there is one industry where this is not a problem. Not one. Every single industry has this issue, and every single industry, if you look at HVAC, for example, a guy that really understands heating, ventilation, and cooling is not going to sell himself off as someone who installs air conditioners for a living. So you've got the HVAC guys upset with the air conditioner guys because the aircon guys don't know what they're doing. They just install, and now I am generalizing on air conditioner companies, but it's each trade has their respective fields of specialization. You've got guys doing surge protection and earthing, and all of a sudden you've got an electrician who is a qualified electrician registered with the Department of Labor, who now all of a sudden starts selling himself as a lightning expert or lightning and surge protection professional. And now you've got the other guys going, wait a minute. Or same thing goes for power factor correction, capacitor banks, harmonics. You've got engineers who are specialized in power quality and harmonics, and all of a sudden you've got electricians fitting all of it. You've got electricians fitting capacitor banks and harmonic filtration systems. So everybody feels threatened about other guys starting to do their work. That's just how it is. Guys, we've got 2 minutes to go. I'm going to cover a few more messages and then I'm going to have to call it a day. I keep thinking I'm gaining on the messages, but they're just getting more and more and more. Jonathan says, I had a site where the plumber bypassed the earth leakage for the geyser because it was dripping. They were happy. They were happy when it stopped dripping. That is going to happen. It's going to happen in every sector. So what do you do with that? You phone the plumber. You have the discussion with him. You pull him in under. You don't threaten him with all sorts of stuff. You try and get the guy to work with you so that when they do an installation again, you can go and issue his COCs. I know there are some of you that are going to argue with me now, and I'm going to see a ramp rate in the number of messages. But guys, that's the only way we can fix this industry is by getting involved with the guys that are in your industry. Jack says, one thing that needs to be looked at and updated is the section that deals with cables and what can be installed where, both for IE and MIE, as the technology on cables has moved on, but the regulations are still stuck in 1970s. Jack, that is not in the electrical installation regulations, though. Which regulation is that? Jonathan says, I've seen building contractors use flat twin and earth. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something? Jack? Not. No, it's Randall. Randall, your microphone's on. Jonathan says, I've seen building contractors use flat twin and earth directly in concrete, no conduit at all. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. It I think the issue is that if you want to go back afterwards and you want to make changes, you want to kind of pull the cable out of the conduit and then it's been plastered into the wall or cast in concrete. There are certain things that some of us will allow that other guys won't. So there will be guys that if the standard allows conductors to be put in the in the ground, you'll have one guy who will put Surfix in the ground because the standard says he's allowed to do it, and you'll have another guy saying absolutely no ways, I'm putting it in a piece of conduit. We all have our standards. And some of us have higher standards than others. Okay, then my apologies. To get back to solar, you said that for solar we need an engineer to sign off. Is that for every installation? So Chris, you need an engineer to sign off if you want to have your system registered. So the engineer signs off the design, the electrician signs off the safety. Guys, we still have another 26 messages. I will unfortunately not be able to work through all the messages. I am going to work through them afterwards to make sure that we cover everything in the regulations. So I'm going to make use of Carl's recommendation, and I'm going to, that's not this Carl Jacobs. He suggested that we create a draft document and circulate that for comment. I am definitely going to be doing that. I thank every one of you for your comments, your concerns, and what you've raised. I will respond to each of these messages, and we'll make sure that you guys get kept up to date. Thank you very much for your participation. Thanks for being part of this. Yeah, looking forward to getting something on paper. Thank you very much for your time, guys. This was very productive, even though there might be some of you that think that it wasn't. I think this has been extremely positive, and I will definitely be able to make use of the information, and we'll circulate a document as soon as we've put something together and highlighted some changes based on the meeting we've had today. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your input. Thanks, Mark. And thanks, Maria Shan, and for putting this meeting together. I'm going to have to greet you guys. Unfortunately, we have to end the meeting. Thank you very much for your input.